I don't know if you remember these things, like the calculators. Well, it's like a scientific calculator, but it got the cover where it slides up smoothly. So, like, kind of reminds me of that song Smooth Operator, but instead it's Smooth Calculator. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, it's finally done. Cody Bellinger has come to his senses, signed a deal with the Yankees for 5 years for $162 million. Took a little bit longer than we thought there, and is really dragged down. And really, Cody Bellinger would say was the last free agent standing there, but finally, seemingly both heads, came to their senses, and so Bellinger will join the Yankees for the next at least 2 years guaranteed. Some opt-outs there, and we'll get into the whole details of the contract, but more importantly, Cody Bellinger is coming back to the Yankees, which, all things being considered, is probably the best thing for both parties. Not only the Yankees, but of course Bellinger himself, he has aspirations of getting even a bigger contract later on. You're probably better doing it in a Yankee uniform, hitting at Yankee Stadium there. So we'll get into all the contract details. Maybe you don't know him, and then all the caveats, so get into the whole thing. But now, of course, as we all know, possibly Jason Dominguez might have gotten more playing time if Bellinger didn't resign. So, well, where does that leave Dominguez, as well as where does it leave Spencer Jones, who's going to probably get the big nod from AAA up to the majors this season there, but obviously now with less opportunities with him, with Bellinger and left, and now Trent Grisham slotted in for center field there. So we'll kind of speculate on the two Yankee young bombers there. Is there a future for the Yankees? Are they going to be trade bait? We'll get into the whole thing. And of Cashman, as always picking names and people off the waiver wires. Got two more names for you to introduce. You can get familiar with them. Again, these are players who maybe not going to be here for the long haul, but nevertheless, I'll just get you the details of them. And of course, a little good news for the Yankees in dealing with Carlos Rodon. Of course, we know he had the off-season surgery on his bulky elbow. I had to take some fragments out there, so I'll just kind of give you an update on that situation. And last but not least, recently at the Baseball Writers Association dinner in New York, Aaron Judge picking up his third MVP there. So let's kind of take a little brief look back at that. Is that, incredible enough there. 2017, he was kind of the baby bomber coming up, and now this guy has 3 MVPs under his belt there. So pretty impressive. So look at that. So a lot of good stuff for this episode, but again, we're going to kind of focus in on the Bellinger contract. That's going to be kind of the meat potatoes of it. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast version of the show. Section 420 Talkin Yankees, wherever you get your favorite podcast. For example, right after the Bellinger deal, you could have got my take right on that. Now you had to wait a whole week for a new episode. Don't do that. Get the audio podcast version of the show. And if you haven't been watching on TV or YouTube right now, go to YouTube, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, crush the subscribe button. So if you happen to be watching the program last week, whether on YouTube or on TV, kind of mentioned that it was a fluid situation. Seemingly, the Bellinger situation was going to go down at any day, even at any moment. Well, of course. Shortly after filming, the news broke originally by MLB's Mark Feinstein that the Yankees and Cody Bellinger had come to agreement on a deal, 5 years for $162 million. Now, obviously, weeks before that, there's been a build-up for this. Originally, supposedly the Yankees offered 4 years. They had come back with a quote-unquote second offer. Now, there was that story in The Athletic kind of detailing the contract, and it kind of came true maybe just off a little bit in terms of the numbers there, but we were hearing something about 5 years, $155 million, 5 years, $160 million, ended up being a couple million more than that. Again, see, $162.5 million, don't forget that 0.5 for the 5-year deal. Now, really, this really got underway really with the Mets, because seemingly we weren't sure who the mystery teams were in on this. Boris said up to 8 teams were contacting them. Obviously, an agent's going to say that just to pump his client up a little bit and give everyone a little bit more anxiety. Seemed like it might just came down to the Mets and the Yankees. Now, the Mets originally wanted to be in on Tucker. Obviously, we all know Tucker went to the Dodgers, and I guess maybe from that, looks like the Mets possibly were engaging with Cody Bellinger, but instead of the money, they make the trade to the Chicago White Sox for outfielder Luis Robert Jr. So in a way, as I got to mention in the audio podcast, you almost have to thank the Mets if you're a Yankee fan. Thanks, Stevie Cohen, because by making that trade and getting their center fielder that way, I guess it really left Bellinger out of options, but no one else had any interest. Possibly heard the Phillies might have been interested if they lost out on getting Bo Bichette there, but seemingly it was probably going to be the Yankees or nothing. And of course, originally Bellinger and Boris wanted a 7-year deal, which I don't think you would get in this marketplace. And with Bellinger's injury, history of some injuries, the last 2 years were pretty solid, but before that, he's had a lot of problems with injuries. That he was pretty much kicked out of town with the Dodgers there, so I don't think anyone's going to give him a 7-year deal. So you figure it was going to be around a 4 or 5 year deal, and that's what this came to. And again, I don't think anyone else is involved there, so ultimately signing with the Yankees there now. Deal's structured a little differently now, so for his first 2 years, so that's 2026 and 2027, he's going to be paid $32.5 million, so he'll get $32.5 million in each of his first 2 seasons. And also with this whole thing includes a $20 million signing bonus. So out of that $162 million, Cody Bellinger is at least guaranteed $85 million guaranteed. Now, some nuances kick in with this deal, which may be beneficial to the player. He does have opt-outs after year 2 and year 3. So meaningly, let's say he has 2 really good years with the Yankees and he feels, hey, my market value is high. I could probably get more per year, or I could get maybe a longer contract. I don't think he would at age 32 at that point. Nevertheless, he could decide to have to opt out either after the second year or the third year. But if you're the New York Yankees or the Yankee fan, you at least ensure you have Cody Bellinger locked in for at least 2 years. But again, as you mentioned, after years 2 or year 3, he can decide to opt out if he wishes to. Now, salary actually takes a step back a little bit after that. So in 2028, salary reduces from $32 million down to $25.8 million for 2028 and 2029. And if he's still there as a Yankee in a Yankee uniform by the year 2030, looking at way into the future there, you get a slight increase then again at $25.9 million there. So, and of course it includes the $20 million signing bonus. And what he wanted was a full no trade clause, which was kind of interesting. He just wanted to remember a couple of weeks ago the deal with Alex Bregman and Boston and the Cubs there. Now, Bregman was almost assured to resign with the Red Sox, but the Red Sox would not give him that full no-trade clause. The Cubs did, and also the Cubs sweetened the pot a little bit with a few more bucks there. So the Boston wouldn't give Bregman the deal, so they ended up losing Bregman. The Yankees decided to give Cody Bellinger the full no-trade clause to keep Cody Bellinger. And, a lot of athletes like this is because, if you set your roots down in a place there and your kids going to school and stuff like that, you just don't want to get upended and traded to Arizona. So that's why a lot of those players want the full no-trade clause, where the player would have to waive that and almost give their okay before they're able to be traded. So the Yankees also throwing that into the pot for Cody Bellinger. And if you're Bellinger yourself, let's say you do have aspirations to opt out, in a season or 2 from now. Yeah, again, wouldn't you be better doing it as a New York Yankee in a Yankee uniform, probably putting up better numbers you would with a Yankee than pretty much any other team, especially, imagine hitting at Yankee Stadium versus hitting at Citi Field. So let's just say, for selfish reasons, he just wants a bigger contract down the road. It's, right now, you're better off signing and playing 2 years with the Yankees, batting, behind Aaron Judge, and which is going to puff up, your stats. And then if you do decide you want to opt out after year 2 and 3, you'll have better stats to do that, hit the free agency market versus, playing for a team, even if it's the Mets, they're going to have a decent offense there, but you're not going to put up good numbers in Citi Field the way you would the Yankee Stadium there. So was a smart move for him. And again, it's just seemingly right after the trade got done with the Mets and Luis Robert Jr. there, I guess maybe Bellinger said, all right, that's it, let's just go ahead with the Yankee deal. And, the Yankees were getting itchy, as we reported here on the previous episode here. Word was that the Yankees were kind of starting to get a little impatient with Cody Bellinger. We're getting close to even pulling the deal off the table there. So I guess maybe he felt a little pressure from there. Of course, we know Cashman made that move, not that I think it was a serious move there, getting Seth Brown, kind of, could be a potentially outfield replacement for Bellinger. Now, again, I don't think that was serious there, but, hey, Cashman might have been Cashman throwing a little, firing one across the bow there, and I guess, Bellinger said, all right, let's just cut the nonsense here, let's go forward with the deal and, lock in there with the Yankees. So, again, this is the best situation for the Yankees overall. As I mentioned many times, I was okay moving on with them. The Yankees were giving him a fair offer, and if you just didn't want to be here, hey, you got to be here if you don't want to be here. But seemingly, I guess this made the most sense for him, again, with his offensive numbers, and if the Yankees retaining him. Had a really good season for the Yankees. Just seemed like he fit in here. Perfect number 3 type of hitter. We know he can play all outfield positions. And again, he had a good season with the Yankees. So I just, I think even though, I was okay going ahead with maybe Dominguez in left field and just kind of, cross whatever bridges you have to from there. Overall, you're better off with Bellinger in the lineup in there. So it's good for the Yankees, good for Bellinger, good for everybody involved there. Again, this Bellinger really just pulling the last string on this one, almost taking us almost into spring training before he made the decision. But you got to understand from his point of view, he's 30 years old. I mean, this is going to be his one chance to really get a big paycheck, make his big money there. So he wanted to take his time and just maybe get the best deal possible there. And just once these names started going off the board, whether it was Carlos Schwarber, Tucker, Bo Bichette, eventually in Bregman there. I mean, this wasn't really the most plethora of a free agency class there. So Bellinger kind of had to take it to the wire there until ultimately deciding to go with the Yankees. And the whole way he was kind of quiet. I mentioned on the audio podcast as well. Kind of tip your cap to him. The only really comment he made was back Game 4 against Toronto after the Yankees lost the game. He said he did enjoy his time here. He did want to come back. Other than that, you really didn't hear much from the guy at all there. A lot of it was just whether Scott Boras leaking things to the media or maybe Cashman leaking things to the media, kind of throwing back and forth that way, little games and shit. Bellinger was kind of quiet the whole way, and this until and then finally I'm sure he'll have his press conference and the whole deal like that. But he didn't complain, he didn't pout, he didn't do this, he didn't send any cryptic messages online and Instagram, stuff like that, and just or on X or Twitter like that. Cincinnati. Kind of kept quiet the whole way there, so, he's just kind of let his agent do all the talking there, and finally, I guess, again, everyone came to the senses, so he will be with the Yankees, for the 2026 season, and, this is good for them because, they got to kind of keep, a lot of teams have made some improvements. I mean, I know the Red Sox took a little bit of hit with losing Bregman, but they've made some improvements, especially in their pitching staff. Mainly, with Sonny Gray, of course, there, and with Suarez, adding him to the rotation. They might have lost a little bit with the offense there, but we've seen improvements by Baltimore Orioles, adding Pete Alonso. We've seen Toronto make some improvements, maybe with their pitching staff. So you don't want the Yankees really lose. I mean, let's say Bellinger would broke them by not getting them there, but you at least want to at least maintain what you have there to go into next season there. And again, the only thing really is going to be interesting now is just the playing time of some other players, mainly like Jason Dominguez, who's struggled last year, really towards the second half there, lost a lot of his playing time there, and he's kind of maybe your future star there, but, the Yankees are kind of plugged up a little in the outfield, so, that's kind of the only question there, but, those things work them out. You have a whole spring training ahead of you, somebody gets hurt, someone pulls a hammy, trades happen there, so I'm sure all that stuff will work out there, but I think, at least overall right now, the second, though, you are better off having Bellinger there in the lineup, so I'm sure both parties are happy. And with Bellinger signing, again, there's the assumption now that, either Jason Dominguez or Spencer Jones will now become expendable, maybe trade and package in a deal that because really there's no room for them to play. But I really wouldn't pull the trigger, so quick on that. I mean, there's a couple of things you want to consider. Yes, they're probably going to, lose their opportunity just with Bellinger in there. But again, you have to look just beyond 2026. And obviously for 2026, yes, you got Trent Grisham locked in as your center fielder. Taking that qualifying offer for $22 million, which maybe the Yankees didn't expect, but he actually did that. But then after that, you're going to have to need a center fielder in the future. So I wouldn't be so quick to throw because both Dominguez as well as Spencer Jones, both center fielders. Now, obviously, just because with availability and other guys plugged in center there, Jason Dominguez has been featured as a left fielder for the Yankees. But naturally, when he was through the minors there, he was a center fielder. So I'm sure if he has to in a crunch there, he can play in a center field there. I mean, he could be a center fielder of the future. Again, you just may have to hold down the fort with the two guys now. Does that stunt their growth? What do you do? I mean, you have to get them at bats. You can't just have them come up there with their talent and sit on the bench and do nothing. That's going to be a little interesting to work their way in. I mean, if I just had to foresee things right now, maybe this gets to the point where Spencer Jones doesn't break with the major league club and they just, have him just get his bats in AAA and get another year on his belt. I mean, he's shown you some good promise, some good power. He's also been striking out a lot. But, we saw the same thing with Aaron Judge when he first came out there. It was susceptible to the low and outside pitch, was striking out a ton. Still strikes out a lot, but again, not as close as the way he used to when he first came up there. So, I mean, you always do a little bit of fine-tuning with him, but I wouldn't be so quick to throw these guys away. And you have to even look further down the road. Just the fact that you have Judge and Stanton. Now, Stanton right now, obviously, I know they played him in the field a little bit last year, but in terms of his time with the Yankees, he's really under contract for 2 more years. He's under contract for 2026 and 2027. Now, there is a team option for 2028. I do not see the Yankees picking that up in any which way unless he has his 2 unbelievable seasons, which I don't think is going to happen there. So, you got to consider that. So, when it gets to the point where, Stanton moves on, you're going to probably have to then move Judge on to get majority of those DH roles, and then you have another spot open in the outfield there. So, whether that's down the road that becomes Spencer Jones or whether that becomes Jason Dominguez. I mean, again, this is really looking at a year or two down the road there. But again, I wouldn't be so quick to throw away these guys because, again, you have to think about center field after Grisham next year. Again, the Yankees are not going to resign Trent Grisham after 2026. I mean, you got this qualifying offer and you hope you get a good season out of him, who knows? Or even within the season, maybe this stinks. I mean, it just happens to the Yankees. I mean, how many times we had someone like Aaron Hicks, looks great, looks promising, and the next year he stinks, he gets injured, he gets hurt there. Now, do I think that's going to happen with Trent Grisham? Probably not. I don't think so, but it is a possibility there. So you don't want to trade away Dominguez and it turns out, Trent Grisham just, 3 months of the season just can't hit a lick. What do you do? Well, you trade away what could have been an option there. So I don't think they're going to be so quick to trade away. And again, these guys are still relatively long. I don't think you're forced to get them. I mean, Dominguez right now is 22 years old. Spencer Jones, 24. Usually, I mean, it's the way that the game is these days. At least at 24, year old would be up at this time. Not fully guaranteed there, but I just think there is room to work them into the fold later on there. And plus, remember with Stanton's elbows last year. Obviously, he started off spring training with the bad elbows. Obviously, got the injections, and finally that healed him. And he'll need a little bit of rehab there. But Stanton, as he's brittle. He gets hurt a lot. He could go down at any time, and that'd be an opportunity to open up. Whether bring up Spencer Jones to be a DH, or you want to move Judge as your DH just to get him off his feet and have Spencer Jones play a little right field there. So again, I just want to be just too quick to get rid of these guys a little bit, just because you have the Trent Grisham situation and you have the Stanton situation. He's always liable to get hurt at any moment. And even Aaron Judge once in a while, whether it's an oblique and elbows, he could be hurt for a while. He may have to go down for a couple of weeks. It'd be great to have someone like Spencer Jones Jones come up during that period there. Obviously, is he going to be as good as Judge? No, but it'll be an opportunity to open some doors for him. And again, his numbers in AAA have been impressive, at least with the power there. So I would not want to just package this guy away. Now, you're telling me going to get someone like Scooble or some sort of big deal. Okay, at least I'll knock on the door and try it there. But just for the fact, because you signed Cody Bellinger, you feel out of the need, you have to unload these two guys. I just want to do it. And really, again, Spencer Jones might have more market value than Jason Dominguez right now, of the two of them. But I think Dominguez can serve a purpose for the Yankees, just kind of be a fourth outfielder, maybe do a little pinch running. Maybe there's a game you want to give Bellinger a day off and have Judge as a DH and, Bellinger in right field and put left field there. So he'll get enough playing time. Is it going to be a lot as if they would have signed Bellinger? No. And as for Spencer Jones, you'll just have to see how spring training goes and make a decision. Maybe he starts breaks with the big league club, but if you don't feel he's going to get enough at-bats, that doesn't make sense bringing him up here just to have him sit on the bench and get like one swing a week. As much as we want to see him right away, there's only spots to go around there. All right, then you just have him start the season at AAA and you take it from there and just see what happens. Again, at some point, maybe someone gets hurt, maybe an opportunity opens up to another, or maybe something like Trent Grisham stinks there. But for right now, I would hold on to the young guns. So the Yankees are done making their quote-unquote big moves. And again, it wasn't an excitable offseason. I mean, they made the trade for Ryan Weathers, the lefty in there. And that's really the only trade technically they made during this offseason there. And again, landing their main prize, Cody Bellinger. And that really seemed to be the most what they want to do. Again, when Cashman was interviewed very early on in the process of the offseason, he kind of mentioned that, yes, the number one goal is to retain Bellinger. And he said, we would like to pick up an arm. They were like dying to pick up an arm, but they almost like mentioned that they would like to pick up an arm there. And remember, a couple weeks ago, they were also looking at another Marlin there. That was Edward Cabrera there, but he ultimately ended up getting traded away to the Cubs, so the Yankees ended up with Ryan Weathers. Other than that, Cashman has been doing as usual there. Minor league deals, little waiver wire pickups there, being nothing excitable. But right after the Bellinger deal, Cashman again dipped in again with a couple of those moves. One of them being Michael Ciani claiming off the waivers from the Dodgers. Now, the reason Ciani was put on waivers is to make room because for the Dodgers on the 40-man roster, because they picked up they signed Kyle Tucker there. So to dump him, to make room for him, they ended up offloading Ciani. And Ciani, nothing much spectacular in terms of the bat. This guy's a complete glove/speedster guy, a defensive guy. He's someone you put in for a little late inning defense, or you need someone to pinch run late in the game there. I mean, kind of a guy to kind of wreak havoc on the bases, or just like that type of deal there. This is not a guy that you rely on for power or anything like that there. So numbers not too impressive. Nevertheless, give him to anyway. So last season he's with the St. Louis Cardinals organization. Now he spent 19 games on the major league level. The rest of the year he was in AAA. So kind of really tells you all you need to know about that. But at least in 2024 was up on the major league level for the Cardinals a little bit more. They played a total of 124 games. Again, but if you look at his major league stats there, not that impressive. His major league time there, a .221 hitter with an entire 2 home runs, 20 RBIs, but he does have 21 stolen bases. So, this is a guy, again, a little late inning defense maybe, or just, someone like a lumbering guy like Stanton, works a walk, he's on first base. You bring in a guy like this to steal a bag there. Now, is this guy going to make the Yankee 40-man roster? Is he going to move up to the major league, get the 26-man roster, during the regular season? Who knows yet? I mean, this guy might just get dumped or designated for assignment anyway. But, at least you have him as an option. Now, only 26 years old. He is under control, so he won't be a free agent until 2031. There's no way I see the Yankees holding this guy in the organization that long. But it just goes to show. But if the Yankees decide to break camp and they don't want to add him to the major league roster, he does have one minor league option left, so they could actually send him to the minors for one more time. But after that, he's out of options, so the Yankees would then have to either bring him up and keep him there or just designate him for assignment. Probably this guy gets designated for assignment. Who knows there? But bring a guy gets in there, some talent there. The Yankees, obviously, we've been going back this for years. Have not a good base running team, not a good base stealing team. Do not create havoc on bases enough as they should, like other teams do there. Again, we all know what the deal with the Yankees. They work 2 walks, and you wait for something like Jazz or Stanton to hit a 3-run home run. I mean, that's the Yankees game there. The Yankees would like to do a little bit more small ball. They've been saying that for years. We really haven't seen it much. Now, the Yankees also, obviously, Dominguez, he swiped some bags last year. Volpe was good at swiping some bags there. But if you look at last year, they bring in a guy like Caballero. He's a base stealer extraordinaire there. So, again, the Yankees are probably trying to move in the direction of relying more wreaking havoc on the bases with speed and, scoring from first to third or scoring from first to home on a double there, things that the Yankees normally don't do. This guy kind of gives that option. to do so again. But again, I don't still see this guy probably doesn't make it past April, but hopefully I'm wrong. And now for the Yankees, for them to make room for Siani on the 40-man roster, they had to designate Caleb Ort for assignment. So he was the pitcher, you remember, a couple of weeks ago, who was designated for assignment from Houston. See, a lot of players is getting kicked off, packed up now. So these are the type of players to do that. But remember, he was designated for a place on the waiver wires by Houston after they signed Tatsui Imai there. The Yankees picked up the hard-throwing right-hander there, which I thought would have been a good option in the mix there. Now, he didn't have a great 2025, more impressive 2024, but was a hard throw there, and you wouldn't mind seeing him just, maybe the Yankees could do something with that type of raw material, but I guess maybe they didn't value him that high, so they designated him from assignment. So he is gone. So Siani in, Ort out. And the second one of these, Cashman waiver wire blockbusters is Marco Luciano. Picking him up from the Baltimore Orioles. Now you might say, hey, wait, Baltimore Orioles actually spent last season with the Giants, but kind of mentioned with Siano bouncing around between, St. Louis, Atlanta, and the Dodgers. Luciano also doing a little bit of bounce around. So again, played last season with the Giants, but was cut by them, picked up on the waivers wire by the Baltimore Orioles. Baltimore decided to drop him, and then the Yankees pick him up there. So a lot of these guys bouncing through teams like there, I don't even think they bother moving. They just stay where they are, and they'll find out a couple of weeks where they're actually going to live there. But it looks like at least Luciano will be with the Yankees, at least breaking in spring training camp. But a little background on him: 24 years old. Again, same deal, only has 2 years of Major League experience under his belt there. Numbers not that impressive. An entire 41 games on the Major League level, hitting a whopping .217 with an amazing 3 RBIs. I mean, I possibly could do better than that, but nevertheless, I could close my eyes and swing and probably do better than that. But again, this is not an offensive guy. Same with Siani. Again, not an offensive guy. This is a glove guy. The good news with him is that he could play both shortstop and second base, which, you just want to throw someone into the mix there, obviously. The Yankees are a little short-handed right now. Volpe is not going to be there for the start of the season as he recovers from the shoulder surgery. And, of course, he's had little grumblings there. It was defensive problems there. You have Cabarello there, probably going to be the de facto shortstop at least to start the season. But this just throws someone into the mix there, maybe create a little competition. And, again, if you have a guy like the off the bench for some late-inning defense, or if someone does get hurt, at least want a reliable glove, again, you can play both shortstop and second base. I don't think second base is the issue. I mean, pretty much Jazz is going to probably start almost every game there. But, again, same thing if something happens to Jazz, or if you want to give him a day off, you have Luciano to do that. Only thing, though, with him, unlike Seattle, there he's out of player options. So the Yankees, if they decide to want to break camp and they can't send him, they want to be able to send him to the minors, they got to include him on the Major League club or designate him for assignment. Of the two of them, this guy probably ends up getting designated for assignment there because the Yankees also. Also signed Paul DeYoung, the veteran from the Nationals there. Obviously a little bit older there, but at the same time too, he could also play a little shortstop or third base there. So I don't think there's really, there's probably no room for this guy anyway. But I just want to bring him in to see what he got there. But again, this is another guy that beyond April, you'll never hear from him again. And the Yankees get a little positive news on Carlos Rendon. He was a guest on the Foul Territory podcast. And, of course, he mentioned about his progress coming off the off-season surgery. Again, had his left elbow scoped. Again, we just saw that final game against Toronto. Now, that was the Game 3 that the Yankees won, but he put the Yankees in a 6-1 hole, and that was kind of the last we saw from the season. Now, the Yankees would come back to tie the game, go ahead and win. That was the only win the Yankees had in that series there. But you could clearly see Rendon didn't have it. Now, he did pitch a little bit better against the Boston series, but obviously we saw him just have to wear down as the season went on there. Namely because, I'm sure he had the elbow issue was bothering him, but also and last season was a career high in innings pitched, so he pitched a total of 195.1 1/3 innings pitched there, and again, overall his major league resume there, that's the most innings he threw there. So you figure there'll be some blowback to that, and the blowback to that he kind of wore out in the playoffs. And again, that final game against Toronto, he had nothing. And we probably never really knew how severe the pain was. He kind of mentioned that even during that period there, if he would touch the top of his head there, his elbow would bark, or it would struggle for him for the top, button his top button, just you putting your elbow there. So looks like he was pitching in some significant pain there, and we didn't hear him complain about it. I mean, he did tough it out there. But again, he mentioned that since that 3 months ago, he's feeling good. Mentioned he's throwing a lot there. Now, in terms of an actual timetable, we don't have anything yet. As we know, he's not going to be there for the start of the season. Definitely going to be there for opening day there. But it seems like at least with maybe a month later at worst, they should at least be available for the Yankees there. But we don't really have any specific timetable on him. But I think the Yankees are well equipped just to deal with it. Hal Steinbrenner, when he had his sort of Zoom meeting, back at the beginning of the offseason there, he kind of mentioned that, with our starting rotation, he liked likes it, but they're going to have to weather the storm through April, and this is kind of one of the things he's talking about before you get Rodon back, and then maybe a little bit more further down the road is when you get Cole back. But yeah, I think the Yankees will be in okay shape. You do have some options floating around there. Of course, I mentioned earlier, Ryan Weathers, who the Yankees traded for to bring in from the Marlins there. He's someone, again, as long as he gets healthy, he can start there. You also have Will Warren, who I don't even think I mentioned his name once during this offseason there. Obviously, when the Yankees, he lost his starting job towards the end of last season there, but for the majority of the season there, I mean, he was a regular for the Yankees. Did he put up the greatest numbers? No, but he pretty much made all his starts there. But of course, lost some playing time as much. The emergence of Cam Schlittler there, and then once you were kind of lining guys up, trying to for that final stretch of the week of the season there, trying to get the AL East there. There's a little bit of the odd man out there, but still he's an option. Only 26 years old, and we saw some good stuff from Will Warren. He has a little some control problem to get there, but at least stuff wise good there. So I figure maybe has another season under his belt there, maybe get a harness there. So I think the Yankees are okay to sit in the starting rotation. Of course, you have Max Fried, you have Cam Schlittler, and of course you also have Luis Gil. I think Luis Gil has room for improvement. I think last year, he was kind of came back rushed, and then it was kind of up and down a little bit. We tried to take a little bit off to the velocity, be a little bit of a control pitcher, and he didn't really have the same dominating stuff. Let's see if he maybe kind of goes back to them being more of a hard throw there, getting more of the strikeout versus trying to pitch to contact, or maybe he finds a happy medium between that. But I think Luis Gil has a lot of room to improve. But last year was kind of rushed. He came back there. He got thrown in. He was kind of working on things there. So we never got to see a good Luis Gil as we know he could be. I think that he had a whole off season to rest himself up there. I think he should be pretty much good to get out of the gate there. And I have faith in Cam Schlittler as well. Really only had that one bad start against Toronto where supposedly he was tipping pitches there. Other than that, he corrected it. All the starts have been, pretty much good quality starts there. And we know the guy could pitch in the playoffs. Obviously pitched, probably one of the best postseason games in Yankee history against the Boston Red Sox. I mean, the only other game that was better is maybe Don Lawson. Other than that, Cam Schlittler was, pretty much impressive there. And even the second game is Toronto. Okay, the Yankees lost that game 4, but, he only gave up 2 runs pitching into the 7th inning there. I mean, he did his job, and in normal circumstances, that's a game you would win there. So I have no problem with Cam Schlittler as well, and he's had a whole offseason as well to sort of take a breath a little bit and get himself rested up there. So I think the Yankee rotation will be okay, at least starting out of the gate. Halstead, they kind of have to weather the storm. Maybe have to rely on people like Weathers, who at least hasn't done it yet in a Yankee uniform. You want to see how you could do as a starter. And someone like Will Warren, who's kind of like your 5th starter there. But soon enough, you do have other options as well. You also have Ryan Yarbrough, who can also throw some innings there to start a game. Maybe there goes 4 innings there, then you go to the bullpen. But soon enough, you'll get your Rendon back, and of course you get your Cole back. And if all the other pieces are intact there, you look at it with quite an impressive Yankee starting rotation. And they even hinted at, during the Boston series, I think Cole and a bunch of the Yankee starters were kind of all sitting on the top of the dugout there, and you kind of look at the potential the 5 guys you could throw out there. Now, obviously, you're gonna have to wait a little while, maybe towards the start of summer, before all those guys are ready there and rolling, and hopefully no one gets hurt there. But you can look at this Yankees starting rotation is quite scary with Cole, Fried, Rodon, Schlittler, and Luis Gil there. But of course, all the arms got to stay healthy. And in closing, Aaron Judge picking up his 3rd MVP award. That's at the Baseball Writers Association dinner. It's usually hosted here in New York. And Judge picking up the plaque there, his 3rd one, of course, alongside of his his buddy there, Anthony Rizzo, which, Rizzo has been on the team a year and a half. But nevertheless, whatever, everyone loves Rizzo, so he was there. And it's just quite impressive. We just wanted to take a look back with this guy. Again, Aaron Judge, I mean, this seemed like, he just came up in 2017, got his 3rd MVP award, and now you're talking like, Mickey Mantle, Elston Howard, Yogi Berra type of stuff there. And yeah, he's going to be 34 to start next season. I don't see any reason for any drop-off there. So this is a guy who may be a 4 or 5-time MVP, doing some impressive stuff. But of course, I think he would trade all those for at least 1 World Series. So that's the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast version of the show, Section 420 Talkin Yankees, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And we'll catch you next time.